Could World War III be on the horizon? Now that's a question that sends a chill down the spine, doesn't it? In this era of rapid technological advancement and shifting geopolitical landscapes, such a possibility isn't entirely unthinkable. As complex as our world is today, the triggers for a global conflict could be as varied and unpredictable. To answer this question, we must first understand the sequence of events that could potentially lead to a global conflict. History often repeats itself, so let's turn back time and examine the events leading up to the previous world wars. In the early 20th century, the world was a tinderbox of simmering tensions and rival alliances. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in June 1914 was the spark that ignited the powder keg, leading to the outbreak of World War I. But beneath the surface, a complex web of militarism, imperialism and nationalism had been weaving itself together, creating a volatile environment ripe for conflict. Similarly, the seeds of World War II were sown not on the battlefield, but in the halls of power. The Treaty of Versailles, signed after World War I, was meant to ensure peace. Instead, it bred resentment, particularly in Germany. With crippling reparations and territorial losses, the treaty stoked the fires of nationalism. Add to this mix the global economic meltdown of the Great Depression in the 30s, and you have the perfect storm for the rise of totalitarian regimes, and eventually the outbreak of World War II. Now, why does this matter? Because these events were not isolated incidents. They were the result of underlying social, political and economic conditions that were simmering long before the wars broke out. And it's these underlying conditions that we need to keep an eye on today. Are there parallels to be drawn from history? Absolutely. We live in a world of escalating tensions, both political and economic. Nationalism is on the rise, and so is the race for global dominance. But remember, history is not a crystal ball. It doesn't provide clear-cut predictions, but it does offer valuable lessons. It teaches us that war is not inevitable, but is often the result of a failure to address the root causes of conflict. It shows us that while the triggers for war may change, the underlying conditions that lead to conflict often remain the same. Understanding the past is key to predicting the future. Now let's delve into the present world scenario. As we stand in the year 2024, the world is a complex web of alliances and rivalries. In the East, China's meteoric rise to global prominence has been a point of contention. Its aggressive territorial claims in the South China Sea, coupled with its economic might, has brought it into direct conflict with its neighbours and beyond. The United States, as the traditional guarantor of freedom of navigation, finds itself in a delicate balancing act, trying to maintain peace while protecting its interests. Meanwhile, Russia, the bear that never quite hibernated, flexes its military muscles along its borders. Its annexation of Crimea in 2014 and subsequent actions in Ukraine have raised alarms in Europe. The tensions between NATO and Russia are reminiscent of the frosty days of the Cold War, and the risk of escalation is ever present. In the Middle East, the situation is as volatile as ever. The long-standing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the civil war in Syria, and the power play between Saudi Arabia and Iran all add fuel to an already raging fire. In Africa, various hotspots from Libya to Sudan, Ethiopia to Mozambique are riddled with conflicts that could easily spill over borders. The scramble for resources, particularly in the context of climate change, could escalate these localized issues into a broader conflict. Then there's the wild card, North Korea. An unpredictable regime with nuclear capabilities, its actions could easily trigger a chain reaction of events leading to a global confrontation. In the digital realm, we're witnessing a new kind of warfare. Cyber attacks can cripple economies, disrupt governments, and sow discord among allies. As technology advances, so does the potential for its misuse, making it a potent catalyst for conflict. As we navigate this intricate web of global politics, the stakes have never been higher. The world has never been more interconnected, and yet, paradoxically, it has never seemed more divided. The world is indeed a powder keg, but what could be the spark that sets it off? Just as a single spark can start a forest fire, a single event could ignite World War III. Now, let's delve into some of the potential triggers that could set off this catastrophic chain of events. Each of these triggers, either individually or collectively, could potentially lead to a global conflict on a scale not seen since the mid-20th century. Firstly, we have nuclear proliferation. The spread of nuclear weapons to more nations is a significant concern. With more countries possessing the power to obliterate entire cities in an instant, the risk of a fatal misstep increases. The chilling effect of mutually assured destruction that kept the Cold War from turning hot may not hold if more actors enter the nuclear stage. Next is cyber warfare. In the digital age, battles are not solely fought on land, sea or air, but also in the nebulous realm of cyberspace. Entire power grids can be taken down, sensitive information can be stolen, and economies can be sabotaged, all with a few keystrokes. A major cyber attack could escalate tensions and provoke a full-blown military response. Then we have geopolitical tensions. The world is a complex web of alliances, rivalries and disputes. Tensions in the South China Sea, conflicts in the Middle East, territorial disputes in Eastern Europe, and the unpredictable nature of North Korea all serve as potential flashpoints. A localized conflict could quickly draw in major powers, leading to a broader war. Resource scarcity is another potential trigger. As the world's population continues to rise, the demand for resources such as water, food and energy also increases. This could lead to conflicts over access to these resources, especially in regions where they are scarce. Climate change could exacerbate this problem, causing more disputes over resources and potentially even triggering mass migrations that could destabilize regions. Lastly, we have the wildcard factors, unforeseen events that could create a sudden crisis. This could be anything from a natural disaster leading to a humanitarian crisis to a global pandemic causing economic collapse. These wildcard events could strain international relations to the breaking point, potentially leading to conflict. It's important to remember that none of these triggers exist in a vacuum. They are interconnected, and a crisis in one area could exacerbate tensions in another. For example, a cyber attack on a country's power grid could escalate a regional conflict, or a resource shortage could worsen geopolitical tensions. So with all these potential triggers, are we destined for a third world war? It's a haunting question, but one that we must grapple with if we are to prevent such a catastrophe from unfolding. The prospect of World War III is indeed terrifying, but it is not inevitable. We must remember that we've journeyed through this narrative together not to stoke fears, but to illuminate possibilities. The sequence of events that could potentially tip us over into a third world war, as we've discussed, are complex and multifaceted, but they are not set in stone. The future is not preordained, and the trajectory of our world is not predetermined. Our exploration of the historical precedents, the present world scenario, and the potential triggers for World War III has underscored the fragility of our global system. Yet, this fragility is not a cause for despair, but a call to action. It is a stark reminder of the imperative to build a world that is resilient, that can withstand shocks, that can navigate crises without resorting to conflict. In this context, the role of diplomacy and international cooperation cannot be overstated. The challenges we face are global in nature, and they require global solutions. From climate change to nuclear proliferation, from economic inequality to cyber warfare, these are not problems that can be solved by any one nation alone. They demand a collective response, a commitment to work together, to find common ground, to build bridges rather than walls. And this is where conflict resolution comes in. It is about understanding that disagreement is not a precursor to war, but a part of the human condition. It is about developing the capacity to manage our differences, to negotiate and compromise, to resolve our disputes peacefully. It is about recognizing that the strength of a society lies not in its ability to wage war, but in its ability to prevent it. So, as we contemplate the prospect of World War III, let us not lose sight of our capacity for change, for progress, for peace. Let us remember that history is not just a record of wars and conflicts, but also a testament to our ability to learn from our past, to evolve, to create a better world. The potential for World War III exists, but it is not a foregone conclusion. We have the power to shape our future, to choose a different path, to write a different story. We have the power to prevent World War III. As we navigate these uncertain times, the lessons of history serve as our compass, guiding us away from the path of conflict and towards a future of peace and prosperity.